Good morning, and thank you for being with us. This is Khalil Hachem with US Arab Radio. It's a cold day, and be safe. We wish you the best of health, wealth, and happiness. Happy holidays. You know, medicine has been evolving and changing forward every day. And this morning, we're going to be talking to Dr. Abdalmajid Katranji about the different aspects of medicine, and get a little update on what's going on with the coronavirus. Before we do that, Dr. Katranji, good morning, and thank you for being with us.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Happy holidays. Happy New Year to everybody. So it's great being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time. We've talked to you about a variety of different things. One thing we haven't talked to you about is tell us a little bit about you. How did you get into this profession? And so we can get to know you better.
So, like any Arab young man, my mom is the one that's the reason I'm a doctor, right? No, just kidding. So, so, no, Fadl, my family immigrated from Syria into the United States in the 70s. I was born here in the United States. بس الحمد لله يعني قدرنا نحتفظ باللغة, so I was able to hold on to the language very nicely. Usually the son of the first generation immigrants, and the first children typically are quite capable in the language. They're exposed to the culture the most. So very proud to identify with my heritage, as an Arab American, Muslim American, and obviously, but then also very proud to be American American. I always brag that I'm a Midwesterner from the Middle East, or a Middle Easterner in the Midwest. So, we're in the middle, and so that tells you my politics as well. So I tend to be a centrist. I try to maintain a balance, hear all sides. I think that's the greatness of our state, greatness of our peoples, that we're very open. And so, alhamdulillah, we got into medicine. Honestly, my dad's a surgeon, and I also have an uncle who's a surgeon. They both kind of inspired me in the idea of in medicine, especially in the surgical field. Not just simply that I can prescribe something, but I can go one step beyond and actually do something physically. And that's always been something that I've admired, and I've been blessed by God to be able to continue in that tradition and enter into this field. My specialty, I am a board certified general surgeon, but I have two specialties. I'm a wound specialist, hand, wrist, and microvascular surgeon.
What is that for those who are not familiar with it?
So for people who are not familiar, wound surgery is for people with open complex wounds, injuries, traumas, where obviously some of our elderly, where they're resting for too long on one side of their body or another, they end up with these horrific defects in their body, or after severe trauma, an accident, motor vehicle accident, or farming communities, for our farming communities, farming accidents where parts of their body gets amputated, cut off. My job is to put it back on, reestablish it, and reconstruct it. So that's the wound surgery side. And then on a day-to-day basis, I do hand, wrist, and microvascular surgery, which is basically as long as people have hands, I have business. So, as you know, very often we stick our hands, the first thing we stick in, and so there's a lot of injuries, and also medical conditions that are affected or affect the hand, including diabetes, hypertension, thyroid disease, cancers, things like that. So, alhamdulillah, it's a very nice, it's a beautiful field, beautiful profession, and allows me to get to know a lot of people.
Wonderful. How long have you been doing this?
So since I completed my residency in 2004, so almost approaching 20 years now.
What's a good day to you? I mean, you deal with a lot of different people, you deal with a lot of different situations. What's a good day you feel like you really fulfilled your mission?
Honestly, the best days for me are the days where my patients turn around and say, "Thank you so much for explaining what's happening." Basically, when they come to a doctor, there's already kind of this bridge of trust. We have this blessing, this mercy, that the assumption is you got your degree, you know what you're doing. So there's almost a default trust. You can see so often is people will have surgery, be like, "Well, what did you have done?" "I have no idea. The doctor did it."
Exactly.
So and that's even for open heart or brain surgery. I mean, it's not, so I try to do, and I do my best to go that extra mile just so that people know what's happening to them, not just simply what I'm going to do to them and then walk out of the room, but I really want them to walk away feeling like they have a good idea of why things happened the way they did and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So when they tell me, "Doctor, thank you so much for explaining this to me, I feel so much better," that's the best of days.
Yeah. Sometimes, and I'm a victim of that too. You have a lot of advertisement, and then you go to the doctor, and you already have in mind what medicine you're going to ask the doctor for.
Correct.
I remember when I was having, a little bit of not complications, but acid reflux, and then I
Yeah.
went to the doctor, and I'm like, all I had in my mind is I wanted Nexium, and the doctor said,
Yes.
"How do you know you need Nexium? You don't need any of that." So it must be really tough these days. There's a lot of information out there, and people come to you forming an opinion on what they need. How do you deal with that?
Dr. Google is always in the room with me, so there's no question. Honestly, the first step is to kind of establish that respect, that mutual respect. You got to build rapport with the patient so that they feel like, okay, I can trust this individual. And very often then you can then counteract whatever Google or the medical field is not the medical field, I'm sorry, but the medical blogs or the medical sphere or the social media that's continually delivering new messages. As you know, right now we're having our conversation. If we have Google open, once we turn off Zoom and we go and open up Chrome, you're going to find like 16 advertisements for hand surgery or carpal tunnel.
Sure,
So
sure.
and unfortunately that's a challenge, right? Because it creates, believe it or not, although these companies think they're doing people a favor, it actually creates a tremendous amount of anxiety because you're armed with information, but you're not armed with the wisdom on how to manage that information. And my goal really is to kind of empower the patient by giving them the wisdom on how to manage that information. Very often, I'll tell them, hey, look, if you still feel confused, let's get a second opinion. That way, I don't want you walking in blind. I want you to feel empowered, and that's the challenge that we face every day with every patient.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you go back to Syria?
I go back and do medical relief in parts of Syrian area. Unfortunately, because of my activity in medical relief, my ability to enter Syria is no longer permitted. There's, some, how it is sometimes,
Yeah.
but our commitment is always to help anybody and anyone, regardless of their background, their politics, their history, etc. So we take care of everybody that we can. So as much as I can, I work along the border regions of Syria. So I've been to Lebanon, to Turkey, to Jordan to help in the various camps and take care of. Believe it or not, I've taken care of everybody. I mean, so you think of where they're from or what their political background is, things like that. And they've been through our relief network. So I've been very proud of that. Prior to that, I was very proud to be able to go to Syria as often as possible. I mean, it's a beautiful country with the beautiful people. It's a great history, So, but like all of us that come from the Middle East, history is a very long and arduous process. So we just watch the evolution come back and forth.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is really sad. A lot of people don't know that Damascus is one of the oldest, most continuous city in the world.
That is correct.
And there's so much history there.
And everywhere they dig, they find a new treasure, right? So it's almost hard to build a house because almost you could literally section off all of Damascus and make it a historical site. So much civilization has come and gone through there. But honestly, it's the beauty of the entire region. I mean, whether you're talking about Lebanon from Jordan to the Palestinian areas to Iraq, despite all the politics, there's a beauty to our people that. Yeah, wherever you go, that's why, think about it. Wherever we go in America, okay, it doesn't matter where we travel. It's funny, we don't travel to escape our communities. We just travel to escape the weather.
Yeah.
Right. So,
exactly.
if I'm going to go to Florida, I'm not going to, Orlando necessarily. I might want to go to Tampa because there's a huge Syrian community there, or Miami, where there's a huge Palestinian and Iraqi community there, or Chicago, where there's a beautiful Lebanese community there, everywhere. So, that's a bit because there's no food like our food.
Yeah.
And there's no Sahara like our Sahara, right? So
the social aspect, absolutely. We feed off that, and we feed off that very well.
Absolutely. And so if I got to go to Chicago, I'm going to be up at 11. The only places open at 11 at night are going to be the Middle Eastern places because Sahira, we're people that like to hang out. And so it's one of the wonders and the greatness of our community background. And I think it's something we contribute to America.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I visit Lebanon, nothing better than the whole community, the whole family get together, the neighbors and everybody, and you just don't get enough of it.
I
So till,
agree.
till
I
the
agree.
day I leave. I'm not
That's
mentioning the food, but not even the day I leave. So it's just a lot of good stuff there. Unfortunately, all the unrest there. We may talk about it at the end of the program a little bit because I know you're involved in the community as well, and you do a lot of work with different organizations. The What we're gonna do is first we're gonna talk about in general what's the update on the corona. Then we're gonna talk about your profession and in particular in what are the things, what are the improvements, what people need to know, and later on we'll talk about your activities in the community as well. Right now we're dealing with not only corona, but I'm told that the flu is pretty bad, and then
Yep.
RSV. So that's what's called triple demic, and how bad is it, and what do we need to know?
Sure. So I would tell you is the coronavirus has evolved, right? So alhamdulillah, it's nowhere near as deadly or as severe to everyone as it once was. But it's still a very aggressive disease such that its behavior has evolved, right? So getting it is no longer a death sentence. That was the biggest fear, right? People would just suddenly have a cough, a fever. It's suddenly they're in the hospital, they can't breathe, and then they pass away. A lot of that has settled. We've now got medicines and conditions, but we're now dealing with this behavior of how our bodies react to this virus, and this is resulting in something called chronic inflammation. Now, we all have people who suffer from diseases where their joints are always swollen, or their lungs are always, people with asthma, their lungs are always on fire. So we're finding a lot of people that get this coronavirus are developing symptoms similar to this, where the lungs are always irritated or their blood is always ready to clot. So now we're dealing with what we call the chronic management and the long-term management. By the grace of God, we have a lot of solutions. But the challenge here is how long will it be till our bodies are able to then finally resist this virus? And this is something we still don't know. We're finding that people who do get the virus, if they get it a second time, they can still get it a third time. But another group of people, they get it once and never get it again, no matter how much they're exposed. And we're trying to find out the differences between one group and another group. We do know that people with diabetes and with heart disease, high blood pressure, obesity, and smoking, they're much more vulnerable to kind of getting the long-term effects. That doesn't mean they're the only ones vulnerable, but they're the most susceptible. But the good news here is now we know, since we know these things, we're managing our diabetes a lot more. I'm watching people taking their blood pressures much more on time. People are quitting smoking, exercising more, feeling better. So that's the good news, is that we are now finally beginning, I think, to turn the page on coronavirus. The intriguing thing is that for the past 2 years, everybody was wearing masks, appropriately so, because one of the things we discovered with the masks is we weren't getting sick from the flu or
Sure,
the
sure.
common cold.
Yeah.
And so now that everybody's unmasking, now you're finally discovering the benefits, not only against coronavirus, but the masks were actually preventing us from getting the flu and RSV. RSV is respiratory syncytial virus, which affects kids mainly. That's the common, it's it's not the common cold. Believe it or not, the common cold is also a type of coronavirus. But the flu and the RSV now are becoming aggressive. By the way, every year around this time, RSV is very powerful, and then the flu takes over. So I want people to understand that these do tend to have epidemic behaviors, but these are common epidemics. We deal with this every 3 to 5 years. There's a cycle. I still encourage people as much as possible, if they can get vaccinated, get vaccinated. As I've said before in other shows, the vaccine is not a promise that you'll never get the disease. The vaccine is a tool to make your body strong so that you can
Fight
fight it if you get the disease.
Exactly.
So, I was so frustrated with some of these political pundits that, oh, you won't get the disease if you get the vaccine. And you're like, no, that's not the case.
It's not
And
no.
unfortunately, because they weren't telling people the truth, and this goes back to what we said earlier, empower people to know what to do with information. If you tell them they're not going to get sick if they get the vaccine, you've now just done them a horrible disservice. How are they going to trust you when the truth of it is that no, the vaccine protects you from getting severely sick.
Exactly.
It strengthens you to be able to fight it. So it's really important for doctors not to get caught up in the threats or the politics. I mean, I know doctors that lost their license in the hospital for saying what I'm telling you, so because they have to say the party line. And it's really important that, our goal isn't, the politics. Our goal is the listeners on this show. And so just remember, our goal is to empower you. And so I want to assure them that, with the flu, with the RSV, very similar to coronavirus, if you're vulnerable, if you don't take care of your sugars, your diabetes, you're smoking, you're not exercising, you sit around, you don't take deep breaths. Also, these are important. Also, keep your mental attitude positive. Talk to your family, talk to your priest, talk to your pastor, talk to your imam, talk to your religious leader. It's really important because these times can be so depressing. All you hear is how we're going to die tomorrow. And I've seen it affect the kids horribly. They were socially disrupted. They had to live vicariously through Facebook. So I really want people out there in the community, talk to each other, take care of each other, encourage each other, make each other laugh. Do what Arab love to do, which is laugh and celebrate and hang out, because these, believe it or not, these are the things that will also protect you.
Medicine. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
What we're going to do is we're going to take a short break. Please stay tuned.
On behalf of the U.S. Arab Radio team, we wish our listeners, followers, and community happy holidays, and we'd like to give you a big thanks for your continuous support.
Were you recently at the emergency room, urgent care, or at your doctor's office being told you need a hand, wrist, or elbow specialist? At the Katranji Hand Center, we offer the latest techniques in hand, wrist, and elbow care. From sports injuries to work injuries to everyday hand, wrist, and elbow problems, the specialists at Katranji Hand Center are here to get you back on track. Call us in Troy today at 248-869-4263 or visit us at KatranjiHandCenter.com to schedule your appointment today.
Our noses can sniff out all kinds of things. Good things and bad things. Your nose knows if those sniffles are just a cold, allergies, or COVID-19. So if you want to be sure, swab and test your nose for answers. It's good to know. Find testing information and resources at michigan.gov/COVID test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back, and thank you for being with us. We're talking to Dr. Katranji. We're talking about an update on coronavirus and the other viruses out there. You mentioned something that for 2.5 years we were wearing them. We were wearing the masks, and did that dilute our immunity for the flu and other things? Is that why now we're dealing more with the flu?
I think to some degree, yes, only because we kind of pick and choose. Like, everybody was talking about the coronavirus. So a lot of people didn't vaccinate against the flu because they said, well, which one do I pick? And again, this comes to the issue of information and being clear. There's no question, if you're not exposed in an environment with a virus, you're not going to get that virus. I mean, that's very simple. And if you do get exposed and it's your first time getting exposed, then that's when you're going to get the most sick. We also know that if after a period of time with some viruses, if you don't get exposed with regularity, then it's like you're starting all over again. So that's why some people getting RSV, especially people with asthma, for instance, when they were getting the RSV, they were getting it so bad, even though they may have been adults, that in a normal environment, you would be getting it every time. How many times when our kids go back to school, we all get sick and we get the sniffles? It's almost like our kids are trying to murder us. No, so But what happens is the kids interact, they play. And by the way, kids interacting and getting sick and exposing each other, that's actually what builds their immune system. So that's
Yeah.
actually a good thing, you know? So I tell people isolation is actually a horrible thing to do. The only time you want to isolate is when the disease is so severe and we have no information about it. That's why in the beginning of the coronavirus, I think it made a lot of sense to be really isolated and things like that. As we have more and more information, it becomes actually more important for us to start interacting and hanging out with each other because of the very things that we're discussing. Is that other viruses, by the way, there's also rotavirus, several different types. There's hantavirus. We also hear about Ebola. For instance, Ebola came out in Africa. We haven't heard about Ebola for 2 years. Again, that shows you that everybody was wearing masks, so no one was getting exposed. It's very protective. Most viruses travel in the air. So that's why when you're finding all this news, I don't want you to panic. Everywhere you can't be sterile. There's no sterile air unless you're in a bubble. You know, every time somebody coughs, sneezes, talks, anytime your cat or dog, breathes, there's viruses going up in the air. And these viruses are actually important. They play a role in our health. Without viruses, a lot of our genes won't activate. And we're discovering that people who are not exposed to some viruses actually get sick for other reasons. So I want people to also understand that this is a natural process. We're evolving against the virus. The virus evolves against us. It's kind of like playing tennis forever, and no one really wins. But sometimes we're upset like John McEnroe, and sometimes we win like Serena Williams. So it's just a back and forth. And right now, it's the back, right? We're getting pushed back. But alhamdulillah, and I encourage everybody, there will be a fourth. We're moving forth. And I think, when spring rolls around, I think all of us will be happy, healthy, either celebrating Ramadan or Easter together. And we'll be back to the festivities and a beautiful Michigan spring.
Absolutely. You have a Christmas and now a New Year, then we have Thanksgiving. I anticipate, from learning from previous years, that the numbers will go up.
Yes.
More people getting together, more people flying together, the numbers will go up.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
What's the best thing for us to protect ourselves?
So really, honestly, washing your hands is the most important thing, okay? Because believe it or not, our noses are actually very great filters, okay? Our mouths are actually remarkably great filters. Even our eyes, our tears have enzymes in it that destroy viruses and bacteria. The thing about it is our hands touch everything, right? So when we eat, we can reintroduce that stuff. Or if our hands are unclean and we eat, we breathe in, we're smelling the food, right? Whatever's in our hands. So hand sanitation remains one of the most important things for us to do. The other thing that we can do is always make sure that we stay healthy. Now, what do I mean by healthy? Don't let your nose get too dry. So always have nasal spray. Because remember, the nose, if it dries out, it cannot fight the bacteria. The viruses and the bacteria actually need the nose weak. So nasal spray, like the saline mist, is actually a tremendous tool to kind of keep those things open. It's amazing how in the Middle East, as we have those steam baths with the camphor oil, the eucalyptus oil, the menthol. Believe it or not, a lot of that is actually very protective. They have these regulatory things that when we breathe them in, it helps clean out our lungs. When we cough, we clear out the stuff that's kind of stuck deep down inside. But also the very vapors have these anti-inflammatory mediators to control how much the viruses can hurt us. Now, these aren't cures. I don't want anybody to say, oh, that's all I need. But these are simple things to do. And obviously, it's always difficult. There are some people that are rude. You don't get in a fight with somebody who's coughing and sneezing and sniffling. If they happen to sit on you in the plane, just have your mask right there and just put it on. And it's only a few hours before you get to someplace where you can celebrate. But definitely, if somebody's coughing or sneezing or actively ill, you want to make sure that you maintain as much distance as you can. 6 feet is plenty. I mean, that's because obviously, if they sneeze really hard, the cloud goes all over the place. So that's why having a mask ready is a good thing. But don't not celebrate with your family. Enjoy Christmas. Enjoy New Year's. We're all going to the football games, to the concerts, etc. And just know that when you're in a large environment in public with a lot of people and a lot of air being breathed in and out, you're bound to be exposed to something. And unfortunately, for some people, that means they're going to get sick.
Yeah. As far as food and vitamins, this is anything you recommend that people use to boost their immunities?
There's no question vitamin C, absolutely a powerhouse, right? There's a reason why the Arab world developed the orange. A lot of people don't realize the word orange is an Arabic word, naranj. That's the original Arabic. It's not burtuqal. We actually translated the word orange over from the English, even though the original word was naranj. The citron and things like the evolution. It was amazing how al-Bayt al-Adim, al-Bayt al-Arabi, the old Arabic houses, right? Every single had either a lemon tree or an orange tree, and there's a reason for that. Because we knew that for some reason when we ate these fruits, our skin was better. And by the way, when your skin is healthier, that means you have a better barrier against viruses, right? That's cut scrapes, you heal better. And also the same thing about vitamin C, it helps boost your immunity. The other thing is in Michigan, very importantly, we know now for a fact people who have excellent levels of calcium, vitamin D, and magnesium tend to do very well in mood as well as in disease. Even against the coronavirus, people with normal levels or healthy levels of calcium, vitamin D, and magnesium tended to fight infections and not experience the complications that people with similar disease patterns had if they had the calcium, vitamin D, and magnesium. And so to explain this to the community, imagine you have high blood pressure and you smoke and you're trying to quit and you can't. If you're taking calcium, vitamin D, and magnesium, your problems, although you'll still have you can still get sicker, but those three things actually build your immunity against that virus better than somebody in the same condition that's not taking them. And Michigan, as you know, I don't know, when was the last time we saw sun in this state? It's been about 3 weeks, right? Unfortunately, that means our calcium goes down, our vitamin D goes down, our magnesium goes down. So it becomes really important to take those to maintain a healthy environment. And especially for our women, calcium is absolutely essential. But for men and women, calcium, vitamin D, you cannot absorb calcium without taking vitamin D effectively. And both calcium and vitamin D are much better absorbed when you take magnesium. So all three, and by the way, magnesium helps with pain and calcium helps with mood. So these are also other things in combination. So without going into a whole litany of herbal medicines and all these things, but calcium, vitamin D, magnesium, and vitamin C, those are powerhouses, and they will really help you boost your immunity and protect yourself.
Is it better to take multi, such as magnesium, calcium, or take them individually?
So the best thing for magnesium, vitamin D, and calcium is to take them together. So there's a lot of companies now that bring them together. It's very confusing how many milligrams and how many, how much. And if you go to the internet, everything tells you, oh, this is the ideal one. Like these are the seashell calcium. You'll see this, or you'll see shark calcium. Don't let calcium is calcium. Okay. There's no, there's calcium, but what's important is calcium can come in two forms, right? Calcium carbonate, which is chalk, or organic calcium. So if you can take organic calcium, that actually does work a little bit better than just simply calcium carbonate. But if you take Tums, for instance, that's what Tums is, calcium carbonate, right? For acid reflux. So, but we do know that, for instance, taking calcium, taking magnesium, the vitamin D is a bit confusing because it doesn't come in milligrams. It comes in something called IUs, international units. And that can be very frustrating for somebody who's like, 1 minute I'm dealing with milligrams. Now you throw something new at me. So I'm not really sure why the IU standard approach. I think it had to do with distributing vitamin D because the people with vitamin D deficiency, it's far more common than people think. And it affects your bones. It affects your healing. Vitamin D is really important on how well you heal. So you want to make sure you're getting 5,000 international units in each pill. So calcium,
that's 5,000 a day.
5,000 in each pill.
Yeah.
Usually it's 5,000 a day, but sometimes if you know you're low on calcium or you're low on vitamin D, then you take 2. So you're taking 10,000 international units of vitamin D. Now, like anything, vitamin C can go anywhere from 500 milligrams a day to 1,500 milligrams a day for vitamin C. Please remember, don't spend crazy amount of money on magical things like that. Vitamin C is vitamin C. If you look at the vitamin C content in either fruits or vegetables and you take enough of those, then you don't have to worry about paying for a pill. Okay? Now, I know a lot of the health pill people will yell at me. It's probably send me bad text messages. I'm not saying that there isn't a convenience to the pill. And honestly, I do take the vitamin C tablet just because it's convenient, because sometimes I know I'm not getting the oranges that I want in a day or something, so I do take those. And also from our diabetics, be careful when you take vitamin C, because vitamin C is oftentimes very sour, right? That's actually what makes lemon sour and unsweetened oranges sour. It's the vitamin C. So they add sugar to it, so you could really damage your sugars if you're diabetic. But there are what they call vitamin C that's sugarless or sugar-free that you can take to help supplement those things. Calcium, vitamin D, magnesium, oftentimes best in a pill form. It's very tough to get enough calcium in a lot of our foods because our foods are so processed. It's amazing how in the old country, we have the old ways of farming, and honestly, the vitamin content in the old ways of farming is actually much better than in the modern mass production that they do. So it's really sad that, when we ate an apple back, in Dimashq, we're talking about Dimashq. Outside of Dimashq, there's an area called the Dudan and Zabadani. They had these beautiful little apples, man. You ate apple, you tasted it for a week because it was just delicious. It was just pure apple. Now here, you go to a supermarket, you have an apple this big. It tastes like cardboard. There's no flavor to it. So I know some of our local Middle Eastern stores in Dearborn and in Sterling Heights and now in Orchard Lake area, support our local producers, because a lot of times they go out of their way to get some of those old style fruits and vegetables that are packed with nutrition. But that's, those are the things that I would look for.
What we're going to do is we're going to take another short break. Please stay tuned.
On behalf of the U.S. Arab Radio team, we wish our listeners, followers, and community happy holidays, and we'd like to give you a big thanks for your continuous support.
Our noses can sniff out all kinds of things. Good things and bad things. Your nose knows if those sniffles are just a cold, allergies, or COVID-19. So if you want to be sure, swab and test your nose for answers. It's good to know. Find testing information and resources at michigan.gov/COVID test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Were you recently at the emergency room, urgent care, or at your doctor's office being told you need a hand, wrist, or elbow specialist? At the Katranji Hand Center, we offer the latest techniques in hand, wrist, and elbow care. From sports injuries to work injuries to everyday hand, wrist, and elbow problems, the specialists at Katranji Hand Center are here to get you back on track. Call us in East Lansing today at 517-332-4263 or visit us at katranjihandcenter.com to schedule your appointment today.
Welcome back. Thank you for being with us. We're talking to Dr. Katranji about the coronavirus and how we can protect ourselves. I have this theory is that there's nothing scientific about it. Is that when fruits are ripe on the tree, they pack a lot more vitamins than when they ripe in the box. I don't know how, if you've done if you've read anything about that.
Intriguing enough, we do know that certain fruits do ripen at different rates and different behaviors. There's no question that the fruit, as it stays connected to the plant, is communicating to the root system. And so the messaging continues to deliver to the fruit, add more nutrition, add more, because remember, what's the goal of a fruit? The fruit is the food for the seed within the fruit. So the messaging so it's intriguing that if you look at fruitless or seedless fruits, they don't tend to be as nutritious.
Yeah.
because the seed isn't there sending the signal, I need nutrition, I need nutrition, I need nutrition. So I do agree with you. Now, I'm not a biologist or a farming agricultural specialist. So any of our community members that are expert at this, please feel free to either disagree with me or inform us better. But we do know that the mass production, we try to make plants produce things in mass production. And honestly, those plants are much more, they're efficient in generating the fruit itself, but inefficient to make sure that the fruit has the quality for which you're actually trying to eat the fruit. So it's actually a lot better to eat one apple that's been grown naturally, organically, and by the way, there's different definitions of organic. So I'm not promoting a type, but yeah, for those of us, when we used to go to the old, the old Bistan, the old fields, right, in the villages outside. I'm talking about like that's the old style, right? That's that's as organic as you can get. That fruit, I'm telling you, that one little peach, that one little thing, I mean, they're so small compared to, but it's like eating 10 of the ones that we hear.
Absolutely, the flavor is full of flavor and unbelievable.
And that's going to tell you, by the way, the flavor is where the nutrition is.
Yeah, yep. Absolutely. That's the messenger right there. A friend of mine has a small field that we go to, and he does not use any pesticide, anything like that. And then we do share the apples with the bugs and everything else. And I just taught my children, I said, just go around it, because this is, if you eat a third of an apple, it's much better than eating a whole bag, from the store. So at least it doesn't have the wax on,
100%. 100%. By the way, that has been studied. There's actually a Netflix special called Dirt, I think it's called. They literally show you that the bugs and bacteria that actually are in fruits, that sometimes, if you have a microscope, you might be grossed out, but, believe it or not, they provide a lot of the nutrition and the energy that we need. Yeah. So it's really intriguing. Think about it. We're dealing with diseases like Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, more gastric cancers, colorectal cancers, these types of conditions. We deal with a lot of allergies, lots. I mean, when we grew up, you didn't hear about the banana allergy or the nut allergy or the peanut allergy. Not that they didn't exist, by the way. This isn't it, but the incidence and we're discovering that it's possible that because kids at a very young age are not appropriately exposed to the type of fruits, to the type of vegetables, to the type of products that we were once, their immune systems are really left very weak. And thus, if we look at the epidemics, we see the horrible picture that we saw about people getting sick and not recovering well and getting these chronic inflammatory diseases. So there's no question that a lot of this is related to where we start, and where we start is at the table, at that family table. And what we put on that family table is very important, not only for your health today, but for when you get older.
Absolutely. Same thing with eating seasonal vegetables and fruit, because, they come during that season for a reason.
Yes.
The Lord knows best. You traveled, and I'm going to ask you something, because when I traveled to the Middle East, I've been in America for 40 years. When I travel to the Middle East, I don't eat anything except something that has been boiled, something that's been cooked, because I'm afraid that I would get sick from vegetables, from the water, from all of that. What's a way around that?
Believe it or not, a lot of times there are certain starter foods that when you come to an area that can help you, kind of build up your immunity, kind of get your conditioning to the things. And intriguing enough, like onions and garlics are actually very, very good gateway foods. To gateway things to eat to help kind of condition and get your food ready, get your body kind of ready to go in a new environment. I think it's very wise. Don't go straight to the Bistan the first day you land at the airport. But definitely, teas, mints, a lot of the spices that we put in our foods are actually great things to help condition our GI tract to kind of get ready to absorb and eat the bounty that's around us. And then obviously, again, washing. I mean, it's amazing. Believe it or not, what's inside a strawberry is going to be very specific, right? What makes us sick isn't what's inside the strawberry. It's not what's on the skin of the strawberry. So the other thing, believe it or not, is when you get to the, eating the oranges there or the lemons, right? Again, you're peeling off the orange.
Yeah.
So the most dangerous part, although intriguing enough, the orange feels very healthy, you know what I'm saying? But peeling off that inner stuff, there's the vitamin C that helps build up your immunity. So these are little things that you can do when you come into a new area to kind of get you conditioned.
Absolutely. What to go back to, to be on track here, and although this is really very helpful, what kind of year 2002 has been, and what are some of the success and challenges for you?
It has been definitely an up and down year. And ironically enough, we can now see the importance of a healthy or a good healthcare system, because the impact of what we were dealing with our healthcare system then ultimately impacted our economics, our economy. So it's been, I think 2022 has been a great year in the sense that we've been able to open up new horizons in medicine. The vaccines that they're introducing to fight COVID, we're now discovering new vaccines based off of that technology to fight cancer. So some diseases that were just 10 years ago were hopeless. Now, because of some of that technology that advanced rapidly in the past 2 years, 2.5 years, we're now seeing the fruits of that. Speaking of fruits, right? That there's some great hope for some severe or horrific diseases, even conditions like we know, like with cystic fibrosis and other genetic conditions. Now that we know that we can introduce basically a programmed virus to help you fight something like coronavirus, we're now finding that we can introduce that same little virus to introduce a gene to help us fight things that didn't exist because we didn't have that gene. So in some conditions, our chest fills up with mucus because we can't break it down. Well, that's because we don't have that gene. Well, now the same vaccine that we gave for the coronavirus, we modify it, we change it, and now we give it to that person with that condition, and now suddenly they can breathe again. So that's tremendous hope and optimism in there. I think one of the big challenges is I think there's a huge wave of depression, of sadness, of social dysfunction. Humans, we're created social beings. I hate the term social media. Okay. It should be called media, because media is media, right? I mean, whether it was the old days where somebody drew a picture and put it in a newspaper and printed out words, or what we're doing here on this Zoom call, coming back and forth and dealing with this, that's media. That's just social is far different. Social needs nearness, proximity, things like that. And I'm watching so many, especially kids who their senior year of high school was basically canceled, and now they just don't know what to do in college, right? You were living in fear as a young person that, oh, you're going to die at any time, and now all of a sudden, like everything's fine, everything's okay. Like what's and we're not empowering people to be able to interact. There's always and I think mental health now has to come, especially in our community, has to be discussed in the forefront. And when I say our community, I mean Michigan, I mean the Middle Eastern community, the Arab American community, the Muslim American community, the Christian community, the Jewish community, everybody. We need to start being honest about what mental health is. And I think it's not just about not being depressed, right? It's about finding connection. And I really find that the 2022 really showed you the vulnerability of people not connecting enough. It's not enough to be on these things where we're talking and with the community here, it's better. I would rather people watch our show with 3 or 4 friends sitting right next to them, where they're holding hands and they can have coffee and talk about this conversation after, than for somebody to be sitting alone in a bedroom, watching this show. We're honored that you're here and watching us. But after this, I want you to go out and talk and say, "Well, Katranji was crazy. I don't know what the heck he was saying in Michigan." But it's so important. I think one of the beauty of our community, that the Middle Eastern community and the Arab community, is that wallah, we love to figure out ways to hang out. That was one of the challenges with our community, to get us to stop holding festivals during isolation, right?
Sure.
But I got to tell you, it's very healthy. The interaction is very healthy. The proximity, the physical exchange is really important. So 2022 gives you a lot of hope with regards to the advancement in technology on the medical side, but also a lot of concern because the isolation and then the over dependence on technology shows you the very vulnerabilities we have to our mental health, to our sense of well-being, without knowing there's a community around us. And so those, I think, need to be addressed as we move forward.
We're going to take a short break. Please stay tuned.
On behalf of the U.S. Arab Radio team, we wish our listeners, followers, and community happy holidays, and we'd like to give you a big thanks for your continuous support.
Were you recently at the emergency room, urgent care, or at your doctor's office being told you need a hand, wrist, or elbow specialist? At the Katranji Hand Center, we offer the latest techniques in hand, wrist, and elbow care. From sports injuries to work injuries to everyday hand, wrist, and elbow problems, the specialists at Katranji Hand Center are here to get you back on track. Call us in Troy today at 248-869-4263 or visit us at KatranjiHandCenter.com to schedule your appointment today.
Our noses can sniff out all kinds of things. Good things and bad things. Your nose knows if those sniffles are just a cold, allergies, or COVID-19. So if you want to be sure, swab and test your nose for answers. It's good to know. Find testing information and resources at michigan.gov/COVID test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back, and thank you for being with us. Dr. Katranji, before we went on break, we were talking about something very important in our community, away from the viruses and all of that, and that's mental health. We keep losing young men and women who are depressed, and I'm sure you've thought about this as well. Is that, are we really dealing with it the right way, and what do we need to do?
I think it's tough to say whether we're dealing it with the right way or the wrong way, only because in so many ways it's something so new, just kind of like dealing with the coronavirus, right? It's really important that, and I'm so happy you bring this up, because honestly, let's be honest, we've lost kids to suicide.
Yeah.
We've lost young people, our generation, and how could somebody at an age so full of life and hope, right? These are it's not like somebody who's in the 50s and 60s. And by the way, in no means am I saying suicide's acceptable or something accepted, but it's one thing when you see a 14-year-old, feel hopeless. That's got to tell us something. I think that we are going about it the wrong way because socially we have been so afraid to offend. Okay, everything is about not being offensive. Everything is about trying to be super sensitive. Everything, and I'm not telling you don't. And it's really important. One of the things I love about our culture, the term mizan, wazn halal. This is really, really mizan means balance. Okay, you cannot be too sensitive because you might lose the need to provide support firmly. Right. You want to love, but sometimes tough love is important, right? You don't want to offend, but sometimes you just need to say the things as they are,
just like we need viruses to build our immunity.
Exactly. Yeah. In a way, when you're helping somebody, you got to give the good and the bad, and I really think that that's one of the tough things is that what happens when we take our kids or any one of us, it doesn't have to be our kids, we feel depressed, we go somewhere, the first thing we're going to see is an advertisement for a pill. Okay, that's the first thing. Is there a pill you can, but believe it or not, the issues of depression is far more complex, and I emphasize to the community, I am not a psychiatrist, so please, and I'm not a psychologist. I have some familiarity with some of these issues, but not the expertise that some great doctors in the community, like Dr. Farha Abbasi, who's out of Michigan State, who's really she kind of leads things on Muslim mental health. She leads the Muslim Mental Health Institute. She's done some amazing work, but she obviously works with Arab Americans and Indian Americans. I mean, it says Muslim mental health, but mental health is for everybody. It's not, so but what's really important here is that when you're part of a community, one of the challenges I grew up Abdalmajid Katranji. I did not grow up Abe Katranji. Okay, I did not grow up Mike Katranji. I grew up Abdalmajid Katranji. And growing up in the 80s, you had a choice. Do you want to stay identifying as who you are? Because, in the 80s, we had the Akilalara, we had the Pan Am bombing, the Lockerbie, Scotland tragedy, and it was not uncommon for me to come into class and being the only recognizable Arab name as to try to somehow explain the politics of 2 or 3 billion people in a class. And I was actually kicked out of some of my classes just out of rage because they couldn't react to anybody. And this was well before, social media. Believe it or not, we actually had something called books and libraries where we went into, there was a card catalog, not Google when we had to get books, but it was tough, so you had to. But the good news is, because we didn't have the social media, we didn't have Google or Yahoo or somebody throwing information at us. We went to our friends, we went to our local centers, and that gave us a base, that gave us a foundation, and it gave us a sense of identity. Today, our kids have no identity. I mean, they're dealing with these concepts. I have my own political position and my own religious position and social position. But look at the issue that's come up in schools today for kids: gender fluidity. Okay, now fluid gives you no sense of stability. There's no anchor, right? So I'm not telling you fluidity is right or wrong. This is not the show but what I'm trying to say is, when I have to help you, I can't have you floating while I'm trying to swim after you. I need to anchor you to be able to help you. And I think that we're so busy afraid of pushing you away or pushing, I think at some point we need to work as a community, work both, religious community, whether it's our priests, our pastors, our imams, our sheikh, our rabbis, our, whatever title that you may have. I think it's really important that they get empowered to be able to say, guys, look, I understand the politics say this, but the Bible says this. It's okay to hear that. Okay? The Quran says this, the Torah says this, I'm trying to remember that, some of the other texts. What it's okay to say, hey, look, because right now my goal isn't to convert you. My goal is to anchor you, and from there you can, once you're anchored, grow your roots and grow your tree the way you want. But our goal, when we need to help them get anchored. That's what mental health is, right? When your mind isn't helping you, you're floating away. You're spreading apart, right? The goal is to give you an anchor to stabilize you and help you out. I'm sorry I'm taking so long on this.
That's okay. That's okay. This is a very important. This is a very important topic.
It's so important.
In the past 2 or 3 weeks, we lost 3 people to suicide. Young men and women, and it's just getting to be. What gets me the most, and I do want to ask you what to expect for 2023 before the time is up. But what really upsets me is this taboo that's in there. We can't talk about this, and then we've held so many meetings about it, but I don't see any improvement. So we need to really evaluate. What to expect for 2023 as far as medicine concerns?
I think, as always, we're going to have victories in medicine and we're going to have some losses in medicine. I'm not a fan of how our healthcare system continues to merge into these mega structures. I believe healthcare is local. Okay. I believe our grandmothers, my grandmothers, God rest their souls, they both had that tubb al-tabi'i, right? That was that natural, right? One grandmother always rubbed my chest with Abul Fas. Yeah, as soon as
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah. And then another grandmother got it is, as soon as I, dawa ahmar, the iodine, right, to help.
Iodine, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I mean, God bless them. And it's so funny that some of the things that they did actually turns out to be the most effective medicine out there. Medicine is local. Healthcare is local. I don't like, I'm hoping, so 2023, I think is going to be a goal of revolution in, are we going to be big and big structure, or are we going to be small and small structure? I really hope the small beats the big, because as we've seen is that, every microenvironment, every group, every culture, every community, every center has its own healthcare needs and requirements. And we need to be able then to deliver to that local thing. So I see 2023 as an evolution in that. I think mental health is actually going to be part of that, because we're going to try to address things. I can't go to a farming community and tell them, okay, this is how you should not be depressed anymore, because the environment's totally different.
Excellent.
Right? I can't go to a community that's it snows 6 months out of the year and tell them, right? So I think 2023 is finally going to go to the pendulum swinging the other way, to start saying, wait a minute, there is no one size fits all. Let's anchor people and understand their local environments, their individual environments. I think 2023 is going to present challenges economically. I do believe that the inflationary pressures, I think the economic forces are going to change. And I think that a lot of things that what we got used to 10, 15, 20 years ago, I don't think it's going to happen in a long time. So I do think that in 2023, there has to be an awareness of strategic planning. You know what I'm saying? You want, in the past, we're like, there's always going to be, Myers is always going to be open 24 hours, right? Yeah, I mean, I'm not, but now you're going to say, you know what, maybe I got to figure out when I'm going to get my milk, when am I going to get my cheese, when I'm going to get that. And that's going to be important, because those types of things are going to be important. I think 2023 is also going to be an opportunity. I was very proud of Qatar and the World Cup. I was very happy that Arab culture was celebrated the way it was. I know there were political forces. It was almost like a third wave of imperialism or colonialism, trying to tell us how to think. It's okay. We can disagree. We can be different. We can have different value sets. It doesn't make us evil or scary and things. And I think when people were suddenly exposed, they were seeing people from Lebanon and from Morocco and Algeria and Syria and Iraq. They were all in Qatar, and people you were reading these Twitter feeds like, oh my God, these people aren't scary at all, and they're fun to be around. Yeah. I thought that was yes, our values are different, how we do things are different. So I think that 2023 is really going to see some rebirth of that pride that we did have back in the 60s, 50s, and 60s as Arab Americans and Middle Easterners. That hey, look, yes, there's a lot that makes us different, but that actually is what makes us so strong and so fun to be around. And I think that type of energy, that wave, is a wave of hope. And I think that I really hope that we find a solution for our brothers and sisters in Lebanon, as I hope we find for Syria and for Iraq. And
Libya and Sudan and Yemen, and unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately, but you know what? Shows like this, Khalil, Michigan, you're bringing people together. Yeah. And when we start talking, solutions happen.
Absolutely. If somebody needs to reach you as far as medicine, what's the best way to reach you?
So my website, katranjihandcenter.com. Is my website that has the information for all my offices and locations. Sometimes we update it, so if there's a brief pause, if you come back the next day, inshallah, you'll have the updates in there. But Katranji Hand Center is a great way to find our name, numbers, and locations. My flagship or my central phone number, because I started off in Lansing, is area code 517-332-4263. The letters 4263, or the numbers spell the word hand. Okay. So 332 hand. There is actually, I have an office in Troy and an office in Flint. So if you call that number, we'll make sure you're in our office in Troy. You're not going to Lansing. And if you go to my website, that'll also have my Troy office number as well.
Dr. Katranji, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I really enjoyed this wonderful interview. Thank you so much. Happy New Year. Happy holidays to you and your family.
Thank you very much, Khalil. Happy holidays and happy New Year's to you and your own, and to the rest of the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.